So we're going to look at goal 2, expansion and reform. And in this goal, what you look at is the politics of the early 1800s. So we look at like a new foreign policy, which is going to be the Monroe Doctrine. We look at a couple compromises that are going to be made on like slavery versus free states. And we're going to look at manifest destiny, the U.S. expanding westward. So the first thing we're going to look at is our foreign policy called the Monroe Doctrine. President James Monroe comes in right after President James Madison had just finished and fought the War of 1812. And so when President Monroe comes in, he's coming in during the era of good feelings. And basically the era of good feelings is a time period where you only have one political party, the Democrat-Republican Party. And this era of good feelings is going to allow the U.S. to really kind of build the nation. So this is a time of nation building, because what we're going to do.
Morning, Kate here.
Anyway, so the Monroe Doctrine is going to be issued during this period of nation building, and so good feelings, the era of good feelings, is just when the country is kind of united, and we're united to build up, to make our country a strong nation. And so during this period, you have one political party, the Democrat-Republican Party. The Federalists died out, remember, at the Hartford Convention, so you don't really have any opposition to the Democrat-Republican Party. They're pretty much going to get anything they want passed because there's no one else arguing ever. With the Monroe Doctrine, what this basically states is that the United States has taken the Western Hemisphere as its personal property. So when we talk about hemispheres, we're talking about a globe. So imagine the world globe, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a knife and we cut it in half, okay? And the western half belongs to us, and the eastern half belongs to Europe. What we tell Europe is, you are not allowed to interfere, to mess with, get involved in the Western Hemisphere. And what that's basically saying is if you Europeans lose your colonies that you do have here on the Western Hemisphere, you are not allowed to recolonize. Remember back in your world history class, you learned that like Latin America, that you had a lot of the Spanish Empire in there, and so they had been controlling all those places. Then you had the Portuguese, who had also been controlling places in Latin America. Well, some of these colonies are starting to rebel, and some of these colonies are starting to get their independence, just like the American colonies had done to Britain all those years ago. So what we're telling Europe here is, if you lose a colony, it is forever lost. You can never get it back, because if you do try and attempt to recolonize, we, the United States, will consider that a direct threat on our national security, and we will react accordingly. And that reacting accordingly means we will go to war. Now, can the U.S. actually enforce this? No. It's a poker bluff. I mean, we're just really good at bluffing countries into doing what we want. Reagan will do it. Okay? He'll do it with his Star Wars program in the 1980s. He'll do it to the Soviet Union, where we basically tell the Soviet Union, we're going to put lasers up in space, and we're going to be able to shoot out any maybe nuke or any missile that you send to the United States. So we bluff people all the time. So sometimes, you know, it's basically lying. When we do this with the Monroe Doctrine, it is self-defense. Remember, we've already purchased Louisiana Territory, which got the French out of our area. We've went ahead and purchased Florida from Spain with the Adams-Onis Treaty. So we have Spain out, we have the French out, and we are trying to slowly get all these foreign powers away from us, because these foreign powers, they're in wars constantly, which is why Washington asked us to remain neutral in his farewell address. So the U.S. has promised, we've told Europe, in exchange for you not interfering with the Western Hemisphere, we, the United States, will also not interfere with any colonies you have in the Western Hemisphere. So we're not going to do anything to the places that you have, and we don't want you to do anything to the places that you lose. And that's the exchange that we make. The next thing that's going to go on is the Missouri Compromise. So Missouri is a southern state, or at least it wants to be a southern state, and that means it wants slavery. And when you look at Missouri, it had plantations. So they wanted slave labor on their plantations. So in the 1820 period, what we're going to see is this debate going on in Congress of trying to keep an equal number of free and an equal number of slave states in Congress. Why are they concerned about that? Is if the southern states had more slave states in Congress. Anytime any law came up, anytime a proposed law came up that was anti-slavery, of course the southern slaveholding states would vote it down. And the southern states are concerned that there might be more free states in Congress because they feel like the laws will become anti-slavery. So everybody's really concerned about power. Power is what ultimately is going to make the Missouri Compromise occur. So Missouri wants to become a state, and they want to become a slave state. Maine wants to become a free state. They also apply for statehood during this time period. So this compromise, and a compromise is a give and take. Okay, so the compromise is reached. Congress agrees that Missouri is going to be admitted as a slave state, and Maine is going to be a free state. When they do that, that means you're going to have an equal number of slave states and an equal number of free states. So the balance in Congress is constant. It's there now. Then what they decide is forever, from this point on, everything south of Missouri is going to be a slave state, and everything north is going to be free. And remember, what they decide is that they're going to do that at that 3630 parallel line. And that's just a map line. So they divide it. Everything north of 3630 is going to be a free state, and everything south of that line is going to be a slave state. And this pretty much settles the slavery debate until the 1850s. Now, please understand, this applies to the Louisiana Purchase. So it only really applies to the Louisiana Territory land. We haven't really expanded further yet. You know, we've doubled the size of the U.S. So this will solve our slavery question until 1850, when the United States is going to fight the Mexican War. So we'll fight the Mexican War, and then we'll get all that land in the Southwest, and then suddenly we have to ask ourselves again, should we allow slavery to continue expanding? When you look at the land that we gained in the Mexican War, it's all in the Southern Territory, and according to this, it should be slave states. So you're going to have another issue popping up, and it's really popping up over this question of slavery. So here's a Missouri Compromise map, okay? So remember, this is the Louisiana Purchase Zone right here. And when you look at this, all this technically above here is going to go ahead and be a free state. And anything south of this is going to be a slave state. Now this seems like a pretty good compromise at the moment, but what you're really seeing is a division already in our country, and the division is coming between slave and free. Whether slavery it should be allowed or whether it shouldn't be allowed. So when you look at this picture, remember we looked at this in class, this is called Manifest Destiny. Okay, so here's Manifest Destiny, and she's bringing the light to the uncivilized West. And look how it's dark. You've got the American Indians running before this civilization, this Manifest Destiny is coming. You got the telegraph lines, and the telegraph right here that was invented by Samuel Morse. You've got the railroad coming. You've got settlers coming. They're going to farm. They're going to plant stuff. And of course, the buffalo are running too. So as Manifest Destiny comes, she brings civilization with her. She brings the light. Okay? So please understand, if you see this picture, it's Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny is the notion, the belief, that the U.S. must expand westward, that God has sanctioned it, and that if God sanctions it, if God says, United States, you must move westward, and if this is a Christian nation, or a bunch of people in the country at the time believed in Christianity, then you better move west, or else you're committing a sin. So Americans are going to move west because God has told us that we can move west. And when we move west, of course, the land is being occupied by people. They're called American Indians. And America is going to go ahead and, brutally kill, through a genocide, the American Indian population. So as we gain our current borders, we're wanting land for a couple reasons. There's economic gain. The southern farmers really want more farmland. The poor whites who do live in the South, they couldn't actually own any land, so they're eager to get all this free, cheap, available land in the West because they're going to farm it. There are people who are looking for gold. We do know there are mountains out west, and there could be gold in them, and we're going to find that. There's religious freedom. Okay, so like the Mormons who are founded in the New England area, they're going to be persecuted for their religious beliefs. They're going to want to move west. And then there's the lore of the West. There's people who are adventure seekers. You know, people who just naturally want to go ahead and have some sort of adventure. See, when you guys remember the actual colonization period in your world history class, you guys probably learned that the Spanish conquistadors, the explorers, they were trying to do things for the three G's, and that was gold, well, God, gold, and glory. And it's going to be the same thing with Manifest Destiny. You've got the people who are trying to seek religious freedom, that would be God. The gold, you've got the economic wealth, people trying to actually get money. And then you've got the glory seekers, the people who are trying to go out there for adventure. It really starts with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 by Thomas Jefferson, and it's going to end with the Gadsden Purchase in 1853. And what this is we're going to buy the rest of the land that we don't get from Mexico in the Mexican War. So we'll finish up the globe. We'll finish up our map. So when you look at the territorial growth in 1853, by 1853, remember, we've purchased Louisiana Territory from the French. We've gotten Spanish Florida from Spain. We get this area, the Texas annexation, from Texas, which was a separate country. And Texas, remember, had fought for their independence from Mexico. We're going to get all this land from Mexico in the Mexican-American War and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. We're going to bully Britain into giving us the Oregon Territory with the 54-40 or fight slogan by President Polk. And then we're going to purchase the Gadsden area, which is just a little bit of Arizona and New Mexico that we didn't get when we actually signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So America gets all of this, you know, and here's the Webster-Ashburton Treaty. It's giving us the land. It settles our border with Canada right here. So we're really kind of getting everything that we want during this time period. So the U.S. population, you can see that most people really do live here on the East Coast, and that's because that's where it originally was. But as time goes on, by 1820, we are going to start expanding out. And you can see the really dark areas is where most people are living, and it's the farm areas, the plantation areas of the American South. So Western land, as you're pushing west, you're going to get into conflicts with the American Indians, and the government is going to break treaties constantly with the American Indians. So when we're moving west, we're going to get the Oregon Territory. The Oregon Trail is going to help us get out there. And so remember, the Oregon Trail is founded by Lewis and Clark with the help of Sacagawea. And the trail is safe, and it's going to help settle the West. So it's a safe route, and you start in St. Louis, Missouri, and you move out all the way to Portland. So what it is basically just a nice safe pass that allows everybody to kind of travel together. And so you would travel out with other settlers in a wagon trail, and there's safety in numbers. So if the American Indians did decide that they want to attack the trail line, they could, but they might not be able to make it because you would have safety in the numbers. And also it ensures that, like, let's say you forgot something, maybe someone else has it, or, you know, like you're having a baby and some other woman's going to help you have the baby. Because they're not really going to have doctors moving out west either. And when you move out west, there's nothing out there. So the territory in the Oregon area is being controlled by Britain, and Britain really wants to keep the land because at the moment it's a lucrative, that means it's a wealthy area. But as time goes on, it becomes less lucrative, it becomes less of a wealthy district or a wealthy region for them. And so they were actually using this for the fur trade, and the fur trade was a big wealth, it was a big income for Britain. And so what ends up happening is the fur trade starts to go down, it starts to decline. And when President Polk in the election of 1840 says 54-40 our fight, he's talking about this map line, okay? He's saying either give it to us or we're going to go to war with you. So 54-40 our fight means the U.S. is actually going to fight over this territory, over this land. Britain cedes it to the United States because they don't care about it anymore. because the fur trade's gone.